Your tomato plants are starving right now. Not for water, not for sunlight. They're starving for something you've been pouring down the drain every single day. And when you finally give it to them, the difference is so dramatic you'll think you accidentally invented super vegetables. So what is this miracle ingredient that's been sitting in your kitchen this whole time? Because we're about to blow your gardening world wide open. Let's cut straight to it. We're talking about potato water. Yeah, the starchy, cloudy water you boil potatoes in and then dump down the sink like it's worthless. Turns out that water is liquid gold for your vegetable garden. One application and your plants respond like they just got a phone call from Mother Nature herself. Growth explodes, leaves turn deeper green, and yields shoot up by 200 to 300% in some cases. Sounds too good to be true, right? Stick with me, because the science behind this is actually fascinating. Before we dive into why it works, let's talk about what most gardeners get wrong about feeding plants. You buy fertilizer, right? You follow the instructions, mix it with water, apply it to your garden, and expect magic. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But here's what nobody tells you. Chemical fertilizers are like fast food for plants. Quick energy, but not much substance. Your plants get a burst of growth, then crash. They're missing something fundamental. Nitrogen for leaf growth, phosphorus for roots and flowers, and potassium for overall health and disease resistance. That's the NPK you see on fertilizer bags. But they also need micronutrients. Calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, boron, and a dozen others. These micronutrients are like vitamins. You don't need massive amounts, but without them everything falls apart. Commercial fertilizers give you NPK. Most don't. So your plants are eating the equivalent of pure sugar, energy, but no nutrition. That's why you can follow the fertilizer instructions perfectly and still have plants that look stressed, produce small vegetables, or attract pests like crazy. The plants are nutritionally bankrupt. Now here's where potato water becomes interesting. When you boil potatoes, especially with the skins on, nutrients leach out into the water. Potassium is the big one. Potatoes are loaded with potassium, and boiling releases it into the water. But it's not just potassium. You're also getting B vitamins, vitamin C, small amounts of calcium and magnesium, and trace amounts of other minerals. All of these dissolve into the water. What you end up with is a nutrient-rich solution that's immediately available to plants. No waiting for it to break down in the soil. No microbial action required. You water with it, the roots absorb it, and the plant uses it right away. It's the difference between eating a meal and getting an IV drip of nutrients. Both work, but one is way faster. Let's get specific about the potassium for a second, because this is where the magic really happens. Potassium does several things in plants that directly impact yield. First, it regulates water movement. Plants with adequate potassium can control their water uptake and transpiration better. That means they handle heat stress better. They handle drought better. And they don't waste energy trying to maintain water balance. Second, potassium activates enzymes. Over 80 different enzymes in plants require potassium to function. These enzymes control photosynthesis, protein synthesis, and carbohydrate metabolism. Without enough potassium, these processes slow down. The plant is running on half power. Add potassium, and suddenly everything speeds up. More photosynthesis means more energy. More energy means more growth and more fruit production. Potassium strengthens cell walls. This makes plants more resistant to disease and pest damage. Stronger cells mean insects have a harder time chewing through leaves. Fungal diseases have a harder time penetrating tissue. Your plants become naturally more resilient without any pesticides. Fourth, and this is the big one for yield, potassium improves fruit quality and size. It helps move sugars from leaves to fruits. Those tomatoes on your plant, they need sugar to grow and ripen. That sugar comes from photosynthesis in the leaves, but it has to be transported to the fruit. Potassium manages that transport. More potassium equals bigger, sweeter, better quality vegetables. Now you might be thinking, okay, great, I'll just buy a potassium fertilizer. You could do that. But here's why potato water is better. It's free, it's organic, and it contains that mix of other nutrients and compounds that work synergistically. The vitamin C in potato water, for example, acts as an antioxidant. The B vitamins support metabolic processes. You're not just adding one nutrient, you're adding a whole complex of beneficial compounds. There's also something else in potato water that nobody talks about: starch. When you boil potatoes, starch leaches into the water. That's why the water gets cloudy. Most people think starch would be bad for plants. It's not. Starch feeds beneficial soil microbes. These microbes break down the starch, and in the process, they make other nutrients more available to plants. So potato water isn't just feeding your plants directly. It's feeding the soil ecosystem that feeds your plants. Let's talk about how to actually use this stuff, because there's a right way and a wrong way. First, you need to boil potatoes. Sounds obvious, but the details matter. Use organic potatoes if you can. Conventional potatoes are heavily sprayed with pesticides and fungicides, and some of those chemicals will end up in your water. Not ideal for your garden. Leave the skins on when you boil. Most of the nutrients are in or just under the skin. Cut the potatoes into chunks, so more surface area is exposed to the water. This increases nutrient extraction. Don't add salt. I can't stress this enough. Salted water will harm your plants. Salt increases soil salinity, which damages roots and prevents water uptake. Boil in plain water only. Boom till the potatoes are done, then drain off the water. Let it cool completely before using it on plants. Hot water will cook the roots. Room temperature or cooler is what you want. Once it's cool, you can apply it directly to the soil around your plants. Don't pour it on the leaves. Root application is most effective because you're getting the nutrients straight to where they need to go. How much do you use? Depends on the size of your plants. For seedlings or small plants, a cup or two is plenty. For established plants like tomatoes, peppers, or squash, you can use a quart or more. The beauty of potato water is you can't really overdo it. It's gentle enough that you won't burn your plants like you might with chemical fertilizers. How often should you use it? This is where it gets interesting. Some gardeners use potato water every time they boil potatoes. Maybe once or twice a week. Others use it monthly. Here's my take. Use it when you see your plants need a boost. If growth is slowing, if leaves are yellowing, if you're about to enter the heavy fruiting period, that's when you apply potato water. Think of it as a supplement, not a replacement for regular watering or good soil management. Now let's talk about what actually happens when you use this stuff. I'm talking about the visible, measurable results you'll see in your garden. First thing you notice is leaf color. Within a week, maybe less, leaves turn a deeper, richer green. This is the nitrogen and other nutrients at work. Darker green leaves mean more chlorophyll, which means more photosynthesis happening. Next, you'll see growth acceleration. New leaves emerge faster, stems thicken. The plant just looks more vigorous. This is especially noticeable in younger plants. Give potato water to a struggling seedling and you can almost watch it perk up. It's not instant. Nothing in gardening is truly instant, but it's fast enough to be dramatic. Then comes the flowering. Plants treated with potato water tend to produce more flowers. More flowers mean more potential fruit. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, anything that flowers before fruiting will show increased flower production. This is the potassium at work again. Potassium is essential for flower development and fruit set. Finally, the big payoff. Fruit production increases significantly. We're talking about 200 to 300% yield increases in optimal conditions. Your tomato plants that were producing a handful of tomatoes, now they're loaded. Pepper plants double their output. Squash plants become prolific. The combination of more flowers, better fruit set, and improved plant health creates this multiplier effect on yield. But here's what's really cool. The quality improves too. Tomatoes are bigger, sweeter, more flavorful. Root vegetables grow larger and more uniform. This isn't just about quantity. The potassium in potato water directly improves the taste and texture of your harvest. There are some vegetables that respond especially well to potato water. Tomatoes are number one. They're heavy feeders that need lots of potassium, especially during fruiting. Potato water is perfect for them. They have similar nutrient needs. Squash, zucchini, cucumbers, all the cucurbits. They love it. These plants produce massive amounts of fruit and need that potassium boost to sustain production. Root vegetables, carrots, beets, radishes, they benefit too, but in a different way. The potassium helps develop strong, healthy roots. You get larger, better-shaped root vegetables. Leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, and kale respond well to the nitrogen and other nutrients in potato water. They grow faster and produce more leaves. Even herbs benefit. Basil becomes bushier and more productive. Parsley grows more vigorously. Cilantro takes longer to bolt. The micronutrients in potato water support the production of the essential oils that give herbs their flavor. So you end up with more flavorful herbs. Now let's address some common questions and concerns people have about this method. First question is always, does it attract pests? The starch in potato water could theoretically attract ants or other insects. In practice, if you're applying it to the soil and not leaving puddles on the surface, this isn't a problem. The starch gets absorbed quickly or broken down by soil microbes. I've never seen pest issues directly caused by potato water application. Second question, will it cause fungal problems? Again, theoretically possible, if you're creating constantly wet conditions. But potato water is applied the same way you'd water normally. As long as you're not overwatering and your soil has decent drainage, fungal issues won't develop. The key is application method. Water the soil, not the leaves, and let the soil dry out between waterings like you normally would. Third question, can you store potato water? Yes, but not for long. At room temperature, it'll start to ferment or develop bacteria within a few days. You can refrigerate it for up to a week. Some people freeze it in ice cube trays and thaw as needed. Personally, I think fresh is best. Use it the same day you make it, or within 24 hours at most. Fourth question, what about potato toxins? A mildly toxic compound, especially in green potatoes or sprouts. Does this get into the water and harm plants? No. Solanine is part of the nightshade family's natural defense system, and tomatoes and peppers are also nightshades that produce their own versions of these compounds. The amount in potato water is negligible and doesn't harm plants. Plus, solanine is barely water-soluble, so very little ends up in the boiling water anyway. Fifth question, does it work in containers or just in-ground gardens? Works great in containers, maybe even better. Container plants are more dependent on what you give them because they can't access nutrients from surrounding soil. Potato water provides a concentrated nutrient boost that container plants really respond to. Just make sure your containers have good drainage, so you're not creating waterlogged conditions. Here's something else that's interesting. You can combine potato water with other organic amendments for even better results. Some gardeners mix in a tablespoon of molasses per gallon of potato water. Molasses feeds beneficial microbes and provides additional nutrients. Others add a splash of fish emulsion for extra nitrogen. You can get creative with this stuff. There's also the rice water connection. If potato water works this well, what about rice water? Same principle applies. Rice water contains nutrients and starches that benefit plants. Asian gardeners have used rice water for centuries. The nutrient profile is different from potato water. Slightly less potassium but more phosphorus. But the concept is identical. Don't throw away nutrient-rich water. Use it in the garden. Pasta water works too, by the way. Same deal. Starch, small amounts of nutrients, beneficial for soil microbes. The pattern here is that we waste a lot of plant-available nutrition in our kitchens. Every time you boil vegetables and pour the water down the drain, you're throwing away something your garden could use. Let's talk about the economics of this for a second. A decent organic fertilizer costs anywhere from $15 to $40 for a bag or bottle. That might last you a season if you have a small garden. Potato water costs you nothing. You're already boiling potatoes anyway. You're already paying for the water and the energy to heat it. The only difference is where you pour it when you're done. Instead of down the drain, you pour it on your garden. If potato water increases your yield by even 50%, let alone 200 to 300%, the value is enormous. A single tomato plant might produce 10 pounds of tomatoes instead of 5 pounds. At store prices, that's $20 to $30 worth of extra tomatoes from one plant. Multiply that across your entire garden and you're looking at hundreds of dollars of increased produce value from something that cost you $0. There's also the sustainability angle. Using kitchen water in the garden reduces waste. You're recycling nutrients that would otherwise go into the sewage system. You're reducing your dependence on commercial fertilizers, which have their own environmental costs in terms of production and transportation. It's a small step, but if every gardener did this, it would add up to a significant reduction in waste and environmental impact. Now I want to address the skeptics because I know some of you are thinking this sounds too good to be true. How can something as simple as potato water really triple yields? Isn't this just gardening clickbait? Fair questions. Let's break down what's really happening. The tripling of yields doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when plants were previously nutrient deficient, particularly in potassium. If your soil is already rich in potassium and your plants are healthy, potato water won't triple your yields. You'll still see benefits, but not dramatic ones. The huge increases happen when you're correcting a deficiency. Most garden soils, especially in containers or in beds that have been used for several seasons, are depleted in potassium. Plants are heavy feeders. They pull nutrients out of the soil. If you're not replacing those nutrients, levels drop. Your plants become potassium deficient even if they look okay. They're surviving but not thriving. Add potato water, and you're correcting that deficiency. The plant responds with explosive growth because it finally has what it needs. This is why the results can seem almost magical. You're not actually doing anything magical. You're just giving the plant the nutrition it was missing. It's like if you were vitamin D deficient and started taking supplements. You'd feel dramatically better, not because vitamin D is magic, but because you were deficient and now you're not. The science backs this up. Studies on potassium fertilization in vegetables consistently show yield increases of 50 to 300% when potassium deficiency is corrected. Potato water is just an organic, accessible way to deliver that potassium. The mechanism is well understood and proven. Here's another factor: the speed of response. Chemical fertilizers can take days or weeks to show effects because they need to be broken down and made available to plants. Potato water contains nutrients in immediately available forms. The plant doesn't have to wait. It absorbs and uses them right away. That's why you see results so quickly. There's also the placebo effect. But for plants, when you're looking for improvements because you just tried something new, you tend to take better care of them overall. You water more consistently. You check for pests more often. You remove dead leaves. This improved general care contributes to better plant health and yield. It's not just the potato water. It's the potato water plus increased attention and care. But let's be clear. Potato water isn't a magic bullet that solves all gardening problems. It won't fix poor soil structure. It won't compensate for inadequate sunlight. It won't prevent disease in plants that are already infected. What it does is provide a significant nutritional boost that allows healthy plants to reach their full potential. You still need to do the basics right. Good soil with organic matter, adequate water but not overwatering, proper sunlight for the crops you're growing. It's empowering. It makes you realize that successful gardening doesn't require expensive inputs or complicated techniques. Sometimes the best solutions are right in front of you. This mindset shift can transform your entire approach to gardening. You start looking at other kitchen scraps differently. Coffee grounds for nitrogen. Banana peels for potassium. Your kitchen becomes a source of garden amendments instead of just a source of trash. This circular approach, where you're recycling nutrients back into your food production system, is fundamentally more sustainable and more satisfying. There's something deeply rewarding about growing food with resources you already have. No trips to the garden center. No reading complicated fertilizer labels. No wondering if you're using too much or too little. Just water from boiling potatoes. Simple, effective, and free. So here's your action plan. Next time you boil potatoes, don't dump the water. Let it cool. Pour it on your vegetable plants. Pay attention to what happens over the next week or two. You'll see the difference. Darker leaves, faster growth, more flowers, bigger yields. It works. Not because I'm selling you something or because I'm trying to generate clicks. It works because the science is sound and the nutrients are real. Try it once and you'll use potato water for the rest of your gardening life. Your vegetables will thank you with the biggest harvest you've ever had. And all it took was not pouring something valuable down the drain. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you want more practical gardening tips that actually work. And check out the next video where we're covering the 3 kitchen scraps that completely eliminate the need for commercial fertilizer. See you there.